What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? This is the Fourth and Fantasy Podcast, episode 19, coming across your way. My name's Meek, and I got my co-host, Wu.
What's going
Always
on?
here, man.
Hell yeah.
Let's do it, man. What's going on?
I mean, we're getting to that time of the year where it's just so nice out. I mean, let's be honest. Rhode Island summers,
Here we go.
top three, maybe top two, and it's not two.
And it's not two.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I like to golf. Played probably 2 or 3 times so far this year. I can't stop thinking about it.
Yeah.
I'm sitting at work and I'm like, I could be golfing right now.
I will tell you what I have been doing at work is I have been just cycling through all of my teams on Sleeper.
Yeah.
Because, like, you know, now that we've finished all of the rookie drafts and things like that, now it's just like, what kind of trades can I work out here?
Right? Yeah, you're
like I'm itching for a trade for some
just
reason.
looking at your team like, oh, I can't wait.
Yep.
No, I know the feeling.
So like I said, ladies and gentlemen, welcome here to the Fourth and Fantasy podcast. Just a quick couple of things. We've hit 1,100 plus plays across Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. That is all because of the folks listening and watching as you are on this video format.
Goats.
Make sure you follow us on all of our socials, Twitter at Fourth and Fantasy Pod, Instagram and TikTok at Fourth and Fantasy, YouTube at Fourth and Fantasy. Make sure you're giving us a like, follow on our socials. Make sure you leave a comment because you might see yourself here on the show. Woo, I know we haven't talked about it, but I did want to let you know the TikTok following is actually ahead of the Instagram following.
I got to get back on TikTok, man.
Yeah.
I've been out of the game for a couple of years.
Welcome. I mean, come back over. The water's fine over here.
I might come back on. Lose a lot of sleep over it.
But yeah, it means, listen, give us some love on Instagram. You know, make sure we bump those numbers up. We want to try to stay even keel.
Yeah.
But quick question of the day. I'm going to call this one Woo Deep Sleeper. Who is your favorite sleeper to grab in rookie draft so far? It has to be round 3 or later. So okay. I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I definitely had a couple in mind when you brought up this question. I want to talk about this guy specifically, because I haven't had an opportunity to draft him, and I also don't think we've really talked about him a ton. We might have glanced over him.
Yeah, no, really quickly.
Maybe once or twice. But it's going to be Jadon Blue. Running back out of Texas. He gets drafted to Dallas. Now, the draft capital really isn't there. He was a 5th-round pick. But when it gets to the 3rd round, even the back half of the 2nd round, like you're kind of getting to a point where you kind of just have to throw a dart and you know, you're banking on the talent and maybe the draft capital isn't exactly there, but you're also looking for, you know, a guy who goes to a team where opportunity is available, or the possibility of those opportunities is higher. So that's why I'm going Jadon Blue in Dallas. You know, the backfield in my eyes is pretty much wide open. It's Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders. These guys are, you know, Miles Sanders definitely on the back half of his career. Maybe Javonte not so much, but we just saw he had free reign in Denver and didn't take advantage. So I think if there's any place for Jadon Blue to, being a 5th-round pick to work his way into, you know, some solid, you know, touches, I think Dallas would be the spot.
I like that pick. Now that you've explained it to me, I like it a little bit more. I think when I first saw it, I was like, or when I first saw the draft pick, I was kind of scratching my head. You know, I didn't see much of Jadon Blue. He didn't really kind of like jump off the screen when you watched him.
Yeah.
But you know, sometimes when we're going for, you know, rookie picks in the 3rd round, you got to look at the opportunity more so than the actual player.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I like that one. I have one name in here, and we've talked about it before, is Kyle Williams, but I'm actually going to change out right now.
Nice.
I'm going to talk about a man that goes by the name of Pat Bryant.
Educate me.
Yeah, Pat Bryant is a wide receiver from Illinois, drafted in the 3rd round by the Denver Broncos. So that's where the key kind of starts, is that he's a 3rd round pick. It's not like he's a 4th, 5th, 6th.
Correct.
They spent day 2 draft capital to go and get this guy. He's a big body receiver, and the interesting thing that I've been hearing about him is a lot of people compare him to Courtland Sutton, which is kind of interesting because Courtland Sutton is, I think, 29 years old going into his age 30 season. Obviously they want to get younger at the position, and obviously this isn't anything to say that Courtland Sutton's going to take a step back this year. But you look at outside of Courtland Sutton, you have Marvin Mims, who hasn't proved himself, Devon Vele, who hasn't jumped off the page. And here comes a, wide receiver with day 2 draft capital that comes into a Sean Payton offense. I think that's something that you can't ignore, and could be if he gets into the good graces of Bo Nix and really develops that connection. You may have a legitimate wide receiver 2 for your dynasty team that you grabbed in the third round of a rookie draft, which is, it's just great.
Yeah, opportunities are key. Like I said with Jadon Blue, it's the same story for Pat Bryant. And like you said, Courtland Sutton, he's getting up there in age. Again, this is not saying that Courtland Sutton's going to be, a non-factor in this offense just because they took this guy. But if there's ever a chance for, a guy like Pat Bryant to make his way up a depth chart, Denver's a huge possibility.
And again, we're talking, dynasty. So it's like, okay, this is the third round rookie pick that either sits on your taxi squad or your bench, and just let him marinate for a year or two, see what happens. Because we have now seen, right, when we talk about free agency and things like that, teams look completely different a 100%. Year from now. You know what I mean? And who's to say that, Courtland Sutton's out, they don't like Mims, and, Bryant flashed, and, you got something on your hands.
Yeah, you got Bo Nix's number one target. Who wouldn't want that?
Exactly. So that's our quick question. We're going to move into around the NFL because we actually got some interesting stuff that's going on, Wu, that we definitely, desperately need to talk about.
Correct.
First one, I'm just going to Josh Matera. Good job. George Pickens, former wide receiver of the Pittsburgh Steelers, has now been traded to the Dallas Cowboys.
I need a Zach Marzano, Josh Matera jersey swap ASAP.
I need amazing. So Pickens and a 2026 sixth round were traded to Dallas in exchange for a 2025 third and a 2027 fifth round pick. And I believe if we take a quote from Mr. Zach Marzano, they got more for Chase Claypool than they did for George Pickens.
And he's correct.
Which
is crazy.
Now that you think about it, like, isn't that nuts?
Yeah, it is bad.
So fantasy implications. I think this takes a bump. You can tell me if I'm wrong. I think everybody gets a bump up, in my opinion. Nobody goes down. Maybe Aaron Rodgers, if Aaron Rodgers decides to play in Pittsburgh, but nobody cares.
Yeah.
But I think Pickens obviously takes a bump up. Dak takes a bump up. I think CD takes a bump up, because now there is somebody that you have to account for on the outside, and you can't just double triple team, CD Lamb in the slot. Like, not to say that Brandon Cooks was a bad player or anything, but
it's two different stories.
It's like you have to respect George Pickens on the outside, set up in the X or the Y. But what are your thoughts on this, Will?
Yeah, so as a CD manager in Dynasty, my first reaction was like, oh damn, that kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Like, out of all the places he could have went. But when I sit there and think about it more, I completely agree that everybody's gonna get a bump. Sure, now with CD, it's not necessarily the volume that he's going to get, but I think the quality of the targets that he receives will be a lot higher. And again, it's definitely a bump for Pickens. Dallas, a couple years ago, that offense was insane, and Dak was at the helm of it. So I think that Dak can absolutely support two fantasy relevant wide receivers. I think Pickens is probably the best wide receiver too they've had in a while.
Yeah.
I think Michael Gallup had like a pretty good year
or
not too long ago.
The year where CD was the 2 to Amari Cooper.
Or that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the best one I can think of.
So I definitely like it for both sides. I would even say for Pittsburgh, are they kind of saying, like, is this the year where they don't go 10-7 and make the playoffs? I think this kind of shows that they get some picks back. It's crazy that they got a third round pick and a fifth round pick out of it.
Yeah.
And they only have to swap a sixth. So.
Right. I definitely think DK does take a bump up now because it's who else competes for targets. You know what I mean? Like, there's Pat Fryermuth, Calvin Austin. We never saw Roman Wilson. I think they took him in the third round of the NFL draft, a wide receiver out of Michigan, but he was hurt all of last year.
Yep.
But so Pickens is a bump up, and I mean, not Pickens. I'm sorry. Metcalf is a bump up, but we'll have to see kind of how this plays out.
They need a quarterback so bad.
So
it's
bad.
So pathetic.
So bad. Will Howard is shaking in his boots right now.
Listen, I'm rooting for Will Howard, man. I hope he steps into that role and takes advantage of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Next piece of news we have: Eagles tight end Dallas Goedert has agreed to a rework contract for 2025. This kind of came as a surprise because I think there was talk before the NFL draft that like they weren't even expecting Goddard to be on their team after the draft, and now they have a rework deal, and I think this is kind of best case scenario for both sides.
I agree. Like you said, his name was in trade talks. I thought Philly was going to be a Mason Taylor option, towards the end of that first round, if they were going to go the route of letting go of Goddard, but. I mean, he took on a big role last year. He had some really big games. I think there was at one point in time where he was a tight end 1. I remember him having a couple huge weeks.
Yep.
So he's definitely a part of the offense. I just think the whole thing with Philly, especially coming off Super Bowl win, they're going to run the ball down your throats, and I think that definitely impacts the receiving options. Not to say that they're going to be completely irrelevant, but the volume just isn't going to be there.
Correct. Yeah, we'll have to see how that plays out. Gabe Davis, we'll be seeing you from the Jacksonville Jaguars. I actually like this piece of news for Travis Hunter. If you were someone who were able to acquire Travis Hunter in your rookie drafts, I think this is amazing news for you, because I think the team trusts him enough to essentially be the wide receiver too, because outside of him you have Parker Washington, and I can't even think of another name. So I think this all speaks good things for Travis Hunter, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, rookie minicamp, I think they all wrapped up by now. But that was going on this past week and a half. And all the clips that I've seen, I mean, maybe I just haven't seen the right ones, but Travis Hunter is a receiver in every single clip I've seen.
Yeah.
Maybe that's intentional by the media, but that's just what I've seen. So
yeah. I'm excited for that one. Sad piece of news. Mr. Derek Carr has retired at the age of 34. It looks like those injuries were way too serious.
Yeah, how does this go so
crazy.
Unknown for so long, and all of a sudden he's like, oh yeah, I'm out. I can't play.
I need to be a fly on the wall for this, because how do you go from, okay, we're going into the offseason, Kellen Moore's the coach, we have Derek Carr, and then it's like, oh, Derek Carr's got a shoulder injury. Oh, Derek Carr might not be ready for week 1, and then
he might not play the whole season.
Yeah, and then boom, he retires. He's gone.
Yeah,
what is going on? I need to know the details of this. But for those of you guys who invested in Tyler Shuck, look at you're sitting pretty right now.
Well, that's the other thing. Is how do they have this maybe some kind of inkling of information in the back of their minds, and that's the quarterback they end up with.
Right?
What are we thinking?
I have
Chris
no
Olave.
idea.
I'm sorry, but so I was thinking about this on the drive down here. For Chris Olave, which, by the way, next year I'm completely out. Redraft, dynasty, you name it. But is there any way, because I don't know if there is there any way this is a buy low opportunity for Olave?
I mean, it could be. I mean, with all the jokes aside, we have to see what Tyler Shuck really is. He could step onto the field and just hyper target Chris Olave, and then it's well, actually, if you bought it low on Chris Olave now, it paid off dividends, because that's the only guy he has eyes for. I am nervous for Alvin Kamara in this situation. I've been a longtime Alvin Kamara fan, and I was actually a big fan of him going into this year with the expectation that Derek Carr was going to be the quarterback. And now that he's not, obviously it's just that awkward period of not knowing how Tyler Shuck's play style is. Does he dump off to the running back? Does he take off and run? I'm gonna be honest right here. I didn't watch any Tyler Shuck film.
No.
So maybe I have to go back and take a look at what the Saints have on their hand, and that's with the assumption that he is the quarterback. I'm assuming there's going to be a battle with him, Rattler, and Jake
I think
Hader.
they already said it. Well, obviously they're going to come out and say that, but they did say that it's going to be whoever out of the three, whoever the best one is, it's all yours.
And I think we just all assume that it's Shuck because of how bad Hader and Rattler were last year when Carr was out. So I think the Saints just have a mess on their hands right now.
Going back to the Kamara piece, though, my initial reaction was this might be really good for Kamara. I thought my initial reaction is, he's now the entire offense.
Yeah.
So I think opportunities-wise, they definitely skyrocket. Maybe the quality isn't there.
Correct.
But,
yeah.
I mean, in terms of volume.
It's almost like a New York Giants Saquon Barkley situation where the player's super talented, and it's just we're going to load the box on this dude, and the volume's there, but the quality's not there, just like you said. So we'll have to see. And then last little bit of news, we're getting a couple of schedule releases. So as we're recording this now, today is May 12th. So Wednesday, May 14th is actually when the entire NFL schedule is going out. So the day you see this podcast, the NFL schedule will have been gone out. But what we know so far is opening day, Eagles-Cowboys. That one's going to be a good game to see.
It's a great game.
And then Christmas Day, we just saw a couple of minutes ago that it's going to be Broncos-Chiefs, a little AFC rivalry. I'm curious to see what the other, because we know we were just talking Christmas Day. It's 2 games, and
I think it's 3 now.
Oh, they're going to do 3 games?
Yeah, they hate the NBA.
They're going toe to toe with
Which
the NBA.
I have personal thoughts about that, but
Yeah.
I won't say them on here.
Interesting. Maybe I'll have to ask you once we roll credits here.
Christmas is for the NBA.
Listen, NFL's making a statement though.
Oh, I know they are.
They're intruding.
LeBron pissed them off.
So it's just exciting. Now we're starting to see like where schedules are falling in certain weeks, and I can't wait to see the entire schedule. Maybe we'll, when that comes out, we'll talk about that. Maybe talk about some key games or things like that for fantasy implications, things like that.
Yep.
So now we're getting into our main topic of the show. So the main topic of the show today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to call this our way too early 2025 QB rankings.
It's pretty damn early.
Pretty damn early, right? We're talking May 12th. We're talking rankings. So basically how we did these rankings were just kind of based off of last year's finishes with a little bit of some projections in place. Obviously, Wu and I are actually working on official projections for 2025. So once we kind of have those solidified, we'll do a whole series about that and tell you who we personally think you should be targeting, maybe bring in some where they're going ADP. But for right now, this is just strictly off feel, who we're liking, who we're not liking. And obviously we're going to give you some insights on why we have them ranked here and what you can expect from this year. So these are Wu and I's rankings mixed together. So if there are some discrepancies, obviously we'll talk about that. But coming in at number 1, this one was pretty obvious. We have Josh Allen coming in at number 1.
Yeah.
And the reason why, Josh Allen is someone who has just been a beast. I think he finishes the QB3 last year, but in years prior, it was oh no, do I not have it up? Sorry, 1 second.
He was definitely
the
one
there it
2
is.
years ago.
He was from 2020 to now. He was the QB 1, 1, 2, 1, and then last year 4. So I guess it's safe to say if you bet on Josh Allen, you're gonna do pretty well.
Yeah.
He's a beast. He had 3,731 passing yards. To go along with 28 touchdowns, 531 yards on the ground with 12 rushing touchdowns. Like what else? What is there to say? To have someone like Josh Allen on your team.
There's only so many words, and now you got Haley Steinfeld. You're engaged to. It must be nice.
Do we get the engagement bump?
Probably. That's scary hours. He's just coming off an MVP too.
The engagement bump, and coming off of an MVP. So I mean, he's your clear cut number 1 guy. If you're someone who's gonna try to invest in Josh Allen in your redraft leagues and things like that, you're going to have to spend early. I'm probably expecting like a 2nd to 3rd round pick on him. And if I've gone that route before and won a championship, so
it's possible.
It's possible, so keep that in mind.
Yeah, he's a weekly advantage on your opponent.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who they have.
I just think of that week was it against the Rams or was it Detroit where he just
it was the Rams.
It was the Rams.
I had some fun with that. League members weren't exactly thrilled with it, but
no, they weren't. But yes, so Josh Allen's our number 1. Moving into our number 2, that is Mr. Lamar Jackson. And I think the reason why we both have him consensus number 2 is it's the same situation. There hasn't been much change, but it's another year in that Todd Monken system that we've kind of come to realize that the more years you spend in it, the better the quarterback is. And obviously Lamar Jackson was the quarterback 1 last year with 4,100 passing yards, 41 passing touchdowns to go along with almost 1,000 yards rushing and 4 touchdowns. I guess my question for you, Wu, is do we see Lamar throwing? I'm not even going to say 40. I'm just going to set the line at like 30 to 35. Do you think we see him throw 35 passing touchdowns?
I think so.
Like I don't know. That's insane.
It's nuts, dude. But I think it's absolutely possible. The only thing we do have to keep in mind is that Derrick Henry is still there.
Correct.
He's definitely got another year of carrying that running game completely on his shoulders. But eventually we think it's going to go away, but the guy's a freak of nature and just keeps defying the odds. So who knows? But the thing with Lamar for me is that he can put up 40 total touchdowns or whatever the number was, but then also be 1,000-yard rushing threat
Yes.
every single season, which is it's nuts for a quarterback.
I was gonna say I'm looking back at his career stats. So back in 2019, when he was the quarterback one, he had 36 passing touchdowns with a 9% like TD percentage, and then that last year, the next year, it went down to 6.9, and he had 26 passing touchdowns. So I think I saw a stat as well as when quarterbacks have insane touchdown percentages, like in your the average is probably in like
I think it's like 4 and change.
Right. Yeah. So like when you see someone have an elite year like Lamar did in the 8.6s and higher, they never repeat and they always kind of come down. So you kind of have to take that into consideration. Now, does he go from 8.6 to 7? That might be good, but I don't know. Seeing 40 passing touchdowns is something that we see again. But the key thing with Lamar is he can do it with his legs, just like you said. He's a threat for 1,000 yards every year. So okay, let's say he doesn't throw for 40 touchdowns. Say he throws for 30, but then he also gives you like 12 to 15 rushing touchdowns on the ground with maybe 1,000 yards, then you're right kind of back where you are. So, there's the variance with Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd get too sticky on having 40 passing touchdowns every year to Lamar, but like you said, like if he gives you 30 and on top of the, the running ability, like he just like a Josh Allen, he's a positional advantage every single week. Whoever your opponent is that week, he looks at your team and sees, oh my God, I have to play Lamar Jackson this week. Like he could put 40 on me.
Yeah.
So yes, when it comes to actual fantasy, the physical points are there, but it's also the mental side of like your opponent going, oh my God, like Lamar Jackson this week, really?
Right. So next one, number 3 that we have is Mr. Jalen Hurts. I had Jalen Hurts at 4, but Wu, you had him at 2.
I do.
I'm gonna let you lead this convo.
Yeah. So first off, I want to get this out on the record. These rankings are incredibly fluid. Like we said, it is May 12th. The season doesn't start till September 4th. But listen, when I go through really anything, but since we're talking about fantasy football, if we're talking about projections or rankings for rookies in a draft, or whatever we're statting out or ranking, I always am in the thought process of my initial reaction to something is what I actually think is going to happen. Sure, I'll make tweaks and changes as time goes on and more information comes out, but I always think that, especially me, but I think even others, your first reaction is the one that you actually think is going to happen.
Yep.
Like I have an example. Every year I make a bunch of March Madness brackets. My first bracket is always the one that ends up being the best because for whatever reason, it was just initial reaction. I'm not overthinking it.
Yep.
So I'd go through these projections, and Jalen Hurts lands at my quarterback 2. And even when I looked at the list, I was like, whoa, what are we talking about here? But he, again, is one of those quarterbacks with the rushing upside. This team is going to pound the ball down your throat.
Yeah.
And they're not going to think twice about it. Like, it's going to happen. Last year he had a almost 28% carry split in the backfield. He did that again. He did that in 2023, and in 2022 he had 30% of the carries.
Right.
So you're not worried about him, not having enough carry. He's going to get them. The tush push survived another offseason.
Yep.
So that's still a part of their offense. And by the way, he has Saquon Barkley, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith on his team. So
yeah, I was gonna say obviously you're seeing the trend as we're going through our list so far. Every single quarterback so far in our ranking is a rushing quarterback. And if you have not picked up on that so far, ladies and gentlemen, you need to, in order to be successful in fantasy football, you need to take the chance on the rushing quarterback, because rushing quarterbacks are just broken in fantasy football. And particularly when we talk about Jalen Hurts, this man gives you double-digit rushing touchdowns every year. I don't think there's anyone on this list that you can definitively say they're gonna give. Maybe Josh Allen, but I think Josh Allen even has some years where he doesn't get there. All but 1 year, and that was Hurts' rookie season. He's giving you double-digit rushing touchdowns, and that's the most surefire thing that I've ever seen in a QB stat. Like if I see for the past 4 years that an individual is giving me double-digit rushing touchdowns, I'm probably going to project them to do that again.
Correct.
You know what I mean? And just like you said, the tush push hasn't changed. Like that's huge.
And I'm looking at his numbers inside the 5, and this offense will get inside the 5 a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Over the last 4 years, he's had 11 rushing touchdowns, 13 rushing touchdowns, 9 and 7 inside the 5.
Right.
Like, so when they get there, you're not, yes, they have Saquon, but also in the back of your head, you're like, Jalen Hurts is going to get at least one of these touches.
I was going to say, Saquon got most of those touchdowns, like housing him from like 30 and 40 plus yards. Like
Yep.
when it's in between the 5, it's Jalen Hurts time and there's no one else.
Yes. So the passing volume, I expect it to be lower like it was last year because they're coming off of a Super Bowl, and I don't think you don't fix what isn't broken.
No.
So if you can run the ball as successfully as they do, he will continue to do that, and because he is a quarterback, those rushing numbers help him significantly.
Yeah. The one question I had in here, Will, and I was going to ask you is, do you have any offensive line concerns for Hurts? Obviously, the only one I can think of to the top of my head is I know Mekhi Becton's gone, and he signed with the Chargers, and so is that enough to worry you with their offensive line changes? I'm going to check their depth chart right now.
So if I'm looking at it correctly, they got Mailata, who I love, Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens, Kenyon Green, and Lane Johnson. The answer is no. I don't have any O-line concerns, especially because over the last couple of years, like, I'm not going to put Becton and Jason Kelsey in the same conversation, but they were both a part of 2 stud offensive line groups. So they've lost both of those guys. I'm sure there's another name that I'm not remembering, but they've been able to move on from those guys and continue to keep this line steady.
I was going to say Jurgens kind of stepped in, for Kelsey, and they just signed him. I think I saw them. They signed him to a long-term deal, so that's good to see. And then Dickerson Dickerson was there. It's this Tyler Steen is who's listed right now. So the starting offensive line from left to right: Mailata, Dickerson, Jurgens, Steen, and Lane Johnson.
Yeah.
And then I'm looking here. They had two rookie draft picks this year, and then one that they've acquired in free agency. So I think the starting core is really good, but then it's like if we get an injury, then it's like, okay, how does this offensive line work, and how does that affect Jalen Hurts in the future? So,
another reason why I'm not worried about it is because Philly knows their game plan. They know how they want to attack each season, and that's running the ball. And they wouldn't put guys out on their offensive line that they weren't confident in being able to do what they know they want to do.
Yeah.
So that's why it doesn't worry me.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving into our QB4, Mr. Jaden Daniels from the Washington Commanders. Again, another rushing quarterback. Crazy, right?
Yeah.
So you have the rushing upside with Daniels. He's now going into his sophomore year in a why am I drawing a blank on their offense coordinator?
Not Lane Kiffin. The Arizona. Oh my god. I'm like staring him in the face.
Yeah.
It's so embarrassing.
So, anyways,
Cliff Kingsbury.
Thank you very much. So he's year 2 in Cliff Kingsbury's offense. He has another weapon in Deebo Samuels. Like, I think all the pieces are going together. Do we see a sophomore slump in Daniels? I don't think so.
I really hope not.
I really hope not. I hope not either. It's definitely there, and you have to kind of account for that. But he was so dynamic last year that it's like he's in the these 4 quarterbacks. I think are like I'm gonna call like if you get any of these 4 quarterbacks in a fantasy draft, you have an elite tier quarterback. Correct. In my opinion. Really hoping that Daniels can stay up there and not have a sophomore slump, but who knows?
Yeah, we just talked about Lamar with being a 4,000 yard passer and could also be a 1,000 yard rusher every year. Jaden Daniels is the other guy who can do that.
Yes.
Last year he had 891 rushing yards. Him and Lamar, if you're making like comparisons, like he is Lamar Jr. Like, so if we've seen what Lamar's been able to do over his career, and to see what Jaden Daniels was able to do in his rookie year, because for Lamar, it wasn't like he was lighting it up right off the rip.
No.
It took him some time, which is fine. Like that, I think that's something we need to normalize again, is quarterbacks struggling in their early years. But Jaden Daniels, skipped that part and he got right to the.
Yeah, I will say Lamar's sophomore season was his MVP season, where he had 3,100 passing yards and 1,200 rushing yards.
Yeah.
Do we see 1,200 rushing yards from Daniels? I really hope so.
Yeah,
that'd be awesome.
Because he's my number 1 pick in the startup draft.
Yeah. And
Not surprised.
I would love to have him in a redraft league, but I know Steve's holding on to him for dear life.
Oh, didn't he get him in like the 14th or something?
Yeah,
Like
it's
something late?
he's gonna have him
Oh,
for
man.
years to come. Years to
Jesus,
come.
That sucks.
But so Daniels is 4. I think right here. So like I said, I think that's your tier break in my opinion.
Correct.
And now we move into we actually had a tie for 5th. So we're gonna call this 5A, 5B. 5A is Mr. Joe Burrow.
Joe Burr.
Listen, he's got his guys. I don't
Thank God.
I don't think I've ever seen an offense put so much money into 3 players because they're going to look so dumb when one of these players is hurt for a long period of time. But listen, I'm here for the ride. Lock me in.
I'm all in for the fun, man. I want to see points.
So the reason why I think, did we both have him at 5, or I had him at 5, you had him at 6?
Yeah.
But the reason why we have him around here, I think, is, obviously with Chase and Higgins, they're locked in, they're not going anywhere. The other thing that's also encouraging too is they did not touch the running game. You would think that they would have invested in one of these rookie running backs. I know we had talked about maybe Quinshon Judkins going there, but they didn't. They trust Chase Brown. Chase Brown's the lead guy, and he's more of a receiving back, so that's all bumps for Joe Burrow. And then the defense is somewhat better. I know we were talking before. Their first round pick isn't even participating in rookie minicamp because he doesn't want to get hurt. So there you go, Cincinnati. That's classic Cincinnati stuff. But what are your thoughts on Joe Burrow being our number 5?
Obviously, I love Joe Burrow, the player. Like such a just a fun guy to watch. Yes, they put a lot of emphasis on their defense in this draft. So my only concern is because last year their defense couldn't stop a nosebleed.
Right.
So, that obviously creates more opportunities for the offense to go out and score. So maybe, their aggressiveness comes down a little bit. But when you re-sign Chase and Higgins to the money that they did, they're going to be airing it out. You're looking at their offense. It's Burrow, it's Chase, it's Higgins, and that's the end of the story.
Yep.
Yeah, Chase Brown is there, but he's not a $100 million guy. So all in on Burrow. Like you said, the first quarterback that doesn't necessarily have rushing upside, but he could be a 5,000-yard guy. No questions asked.
I guess. Is he going to be a 5,000-yard guy? Because I want to say
he was 49 last year.
Yeah. I don't think he's ever had a 5,000-yard season.
I don't think so either, but he absolutely can.
He absolutely can. But so are you nervous though? Say you're in a draft right now and you're staring down, let's say Burrow's sitting in the 5th round. Are you pulling trigger on Joe Burrow in the 5th round for your quarterback?
Where did I take him last year? I think I took him in the 6th or 7th, but quarterbacks tend to drop in our drafts.
They do a lot.
So I would technically consider that a 5th round pick. So yeah, the answer is yes. I would take him in the 5th.
Yeah.
Depending on what my roster looks like prior to that. But if I'm in a situation where quarterback's 100% an option and I want to spend up a little bit on one, I'm taking Joe Burrow all day.
Yeah. The only thing that scares me with passing quarterbacks is that they don't have that trump card of I'm going to escape the pocket and gain fantasy points. What you see is what you get from Joe Burrow, and if there's a injury on their offensive line and then the offensive line turns into Swiss cheese, it's where's the value
right
for Joe Burrow? So
I completely hear the concerns without having because if you invest in a pocket passer for your fantasy team, the dude has to ball out in order for you to have a good season. But if I'm willing to, if there's a player that I'm willing to put my chips behind, it's Joe.
Yeah, but it's also, yes, that dude has to ball out, but there needs to be the perfect situation, and I think you got that last year with Joe Burrow, where it was just Chase is down there somewhere, I'm just gonna chuck it because we don't have a running game, and oh by the way, our defense is Swiss cheese and they're going to give up 30 points a game, so we have to score 35 points a game.
Right.
I wonder if I don't think so, but I wonder if these defensive changes along with a new defensive coordinator, does that change some things? And then they don't have to score as much, then that hurts the value of Burrow. We'd have to wait and see as when the season starts.
It is something you have to consider, but again, like, how do you pay all those guys all that money and then not say like, all right, let's go out and score 35? Like, I think they're still going to be applying pressure. There probably will be more games this year that they might not have to.
Correct. Yeah.
So yeah,
I wonder if that hurt those, but like in fantasy,
that
you need every single game.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I wonder if you get into a situation where we don't need to score 35 points. It's like, okay, well, that's going to hurt me. Whereas like weeks where Joe Burrow's putting up like 28 to 35 points,
right,
now he's only giving you like 20 to 25 points. And then is that a difference maker? I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
No, it's things you have to. It's things you have to think about.
Right. So like I said, Joe Burrow's our 5A. We're going to move into our 5B. That's Bo Nix.
This was my number 5.
Sophomore, going into year 2. Wow, quarterback out of Denver. So again, another quarterback with rushing upside that you need to consider. Second year in a Peyton system. And I think we were sitting here in the offseason, saying we need to make sure, or Bo Nix needs competent pieces. And I think you saw that, excuse me, with them investing in Evan Ingram. I just brought him up in our deep sleeper. Pat Bryant might be someone that you want to look out for. And then on top of it, they have a running game now with drafting RJ Harvey. So, Bo Nix is an interesting piece. I'd be curious to see where all of the main kind of outlets have Bo Nix ranked in their rankings, because I wonder if they have him this high. I don't know.
Yeah, the thing, I mean, I've said I've been on the Bo Nix train last couple months. Obviously, he was a part of a trade, but I sent them away. But
Sam Presti.
But the thing that really confuses me about Denver, and we talked about this, in our post draft episodes, like, I was really expecting them with that 20th pick to get a wide receiver or a running back and really solidify, a big piece for Bo Nix. Like, I thought, Igbuka got taken the pick before, but I thought that could have been an option. I thought Matthew Golden would be an option. To be honest, I thought running back was the home run play, and they were going to smash that in the first round. To me, that's still really confusing for me. I'm sure they're going to make me look stupid come season time, but it was just, I felt like they were just like one young piece away from really like getting all behind Bo Nix and saying like, this is your team. Like, we are completely bought, not to say that they aren't completely bought in on him, but when you add a first round, offensive talent, that's kind of an indication on where you think Bo Nix is headed.
Right.
And I would really like to see a wide receiver or running back there, but all that aside, going into last year, I had no idea that Bo Nix could run the ball the way that he does. So now I'm fully anticipating for that to step up.
Yeah, it's kind of sneaky. It's almost like it reminds me of like Aaron Rodgers when he was on the Packers, where it was like, this dude sneakily is going to give you.
He almost had 5 yards to carry.
Yeah, exactly. Where it's like, I think it's unscripted stuff, but like he knows where to go when he has the ball in his hands, and I think that's an important piece. I'm hoping, he had 3,700 passing yards. I'm hoping he actually can bring that up a little bit, and we see a little bit more volume out of him. That would actually be really good. But I gotta kind of give up, the same argument that I had for Joe Burrow. It's actually here for Bo Nix, is that defense is insane. So obviously we're talking about hoping that a first round talent was invested into the offense. They didn't. They put it into the defense.
They doubled down.
And that defense is going to be scary.
Lockdown.
So like, does Bo Nix and the offense have to score, as many points as they do? No, but hopefully they can kind of eat it up on the ground, and he can acquire, these yardages. Who knows?
Yeah, it's a valid point. I don't know where I'm at with the RJ Harvey pick, but all the signs are pointing towards him being, their guy. They were all in on him. He's going to be the lead back in that backfield. And depending on how good he ends up being, I hope that them finally having a somewhat competent running game, like maybe that opens him up to be a 4,000 plus pass.
I mean, who knows? The offensive line is good though. There, so it's like they can make anybody look competent.
Right.
You know what I mean? They made Javonte Williams look, relevant, and we'll see what he really has when he's in Dallas. But they make anybody really kind of look good. So I think RJ Harvey's going to probably have a decent season because they invested in him and they wanted this player. So Sean Payton's going to kind of shove it down our throats to show us like it's going to work.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see. So we're moving into our QB7. QB7 is Mr. Baker Mayfield, quarterback out of Tampa Bay. I mean, what is there to say about Baker Mayfield?
This guy's a dog.
Nothing really changed, right? They got back Chris Godwin. Mike Evans is still there. Oh, wait, we took a first-round wide receiver. We're just going to keep giving Baker Mayfield toys to play with.
Yeah.
So I think Baker Mayfield here at 7 is probably pretty good. I think we were talking about it before. I don't have it anymore, but I did. But the thing with Baker is it's passing volume. You know what I mean? Obviously, last year he had 570 passing attempts. I'm sorry. The year prior to that was about 560 yards. Yes, Liam Cohen is gone, but they're showing you with their actions in the draft and everything else is that they're committing to Baker Mayfield.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
I think that's huge when you have your front office all the way behind you, like Baker does. It eliminates a lot of possible question marks. Especially for a guy with a career like Baker Mayfield's had, the being the number 1 pick and having all this hype and then kind of bouncing around and thinking his career was over.
Yep.
And then he really revived it in Tampa Bay. But he's such a fun player to watch. Every single week he's giving you 110%, no questions asked. So I love that they bring in Igbuka. That wide receiver room, there will be some question marks when it comes to, who kind of, what role each guy is going to play. We think we kind of have an idea, but, anything, it's all subject to change. I am expecting them to lean into their running game a little bit more this year, but I don't think that's going to be too much of a hit on Baker. The only thing with Baker is last year he had, hold on, I have it right in front of me. He had 4,500 yards last year, which is awesome.
I was just about to ask you because I know when we did our year in review series at the very beginning, I think we both kind of were in agreement that was your time to sell Baker high.
Yeah.
But now it's like, do you see Baker? Maybe not 4,500, but do you see him going 4,000 plus again?
Yeah, I can definitely see him being a 4,000 guy. But yeah,
God, and he had 41 touchdowns. I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I don't know. Last year he had 4,500 yards and 41 passing touchdowns. I don't know if he can get any better than that. Obviously, I'm rooting for him to do so.
Yeah,
but I mean that's an insane year. That's an insane year.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe if someone's willing to part ways with it, I'm just thinking dynasty. If someone's willing to part ways and you get a 1 to 2 year rental, for Baker Mayfield as a QB2 on your dynasty team, that could be good.
If I'm competing for a championship, this would be someone I'm targeting.
Yeah,
for sure. But again, I don't.
You just don't want to overpay.
Yeah, I don't think I don't know if he can get any better than what he did last year. I really hope he does. But that was a sick year, and I think you just got to take it as it is.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, going into our quarterback 8, we have 3 more left, and then we'll get into some honorable mentions. But quarterback 8 is Kyler Murray, and with Kyler Murray, there are a couple of things, I really hope. So Kyler Murray was someone that I invested in heavily in all of my redraft leagues last year, and he burned me.
Yeah.
I'm not shy to say that.
But I don't think you were wrong in doing so. I was thinking the same thing. You can't just beat me to it.
I was going to say, I think he was my favorite late round QB target, outside of all of the, I can't remember what QB he was off the board in our league, but outside of all the big names,
I think he was probably 7 or 8.
Yeah, but he's a QB with rushing upside, so that that's something that you love to see. For in this year in particular, I want to see him develop this connection with Marvin Harrison. It frustrated me so bad watching him week after week with him on my fantasy roster, and he's not utilizing it's like you have a Lamborghini and you're just choosing not to drive it. You know what I mean? And it was so frustrating. And so I hope over this offseason that he and Marvin Harrison Jr. can really work on some chemistry. But obviously we have Trey McBride, I'm sorry, blanked on his first name, signed to a long-term deal. And so he's got a reliable target if Marvin Harrison isn't going to work out. And I really hope that Kyler actually rushes more, because there were times, when you watched him last year where he really didn't want to rush, and that was actually a topic. I think I had saw some beat reporters ask it either at the end of the year or it was around draft time, where it was like, Kyler acknowledged that I didn't rush as much as I probably should have, and I hope to change that come next year. So that's all encouraging things to hear.
Yeah, there was a lot of games last year where it was like a tale of two halves. Like either he would come out in the first half and had a bunch of rushing attempts and it was a huge part of the offense, and then the second half they would just completely abandon it, or vice versa. And it was just like the thought process didn't make sense, and it makes you wonder if those were, if they're just not telling him like he should be running the ball more, if this is just really all on him and it's not necessarily like designed into their script. But even like, he says last year, like, I know I probably should have ran the ball more. Last year was the most he had run the ball in like 3 years.
Yeah.
He was
because he came off the ACL injury.
Well, yeah. So there was going to be a couple things here that I want to highlight as to why, like, I think more people should be in on Kyler. Because like you said, he's a rushing quarterback, so I think that easily puts top 5 upside right off the bat. Not to say that he's gonna get that, but when you have the running ability that he possesses,
that's the difference maker.
Exactly. So since 2021, he played 14 games, 11-8, and then last year he finally played 17. So that's something that is huge and is a plus. And then when it comes to his rushing, from 2021 on, he went 423 attempts, 418 attempts, 244. Obviously, he only played 8 games, but then last year he had 78.
Yeah.
And the rushing yards had come down those 3 years, and then finally came back up this year. The rushing touchdowns increased, and the yards per carry are his highest in as many years. So these are all positives that we finally see a full season out of Kyler, and you're still like wanting more, and I think there is more there.
Yeah, I was just looking at his game log, and the weeks that he was a top 10 quarterback for fantasy, these are the rushing yards that he had those weeks: 59, 83, 64, 19, 21, 16, and then 22. So more than half of those weeks where he was a top 10, he's giving you at least like 50 rushing yards, which is huge.
There's a reason why our first 4 quarterbacks are all
rushing. Yeah. So we'll have to we'll see, but I'm really I like Kyler. I think he's got
all
the
necessary weapons.
He does.
Do so.
So we'll have to see.
And I was honestly impressed with Arizona last year. I thought they were going to be a dumpster fire, and they impressed me.
Yeah. Number 9, Mr. Jared Goff.
Mr. Consistent.
Mr. Consistent. But does Mr. Consistent is still consistent though?
Hope so.
That's one of the key pieces that I'm going to highlight in here. But so Jared Goff. Let's talk about the positives, right? They were the number 1 scoring offense in the NFL. I think part of that was due to their problems on the defensive line, and they had to keep up. Goff keeps all of his weapons. So Gibbs is still there. Montgomery comes back healthy. Obviously he's got Amon-Ra, Jamison Williams, Sam Laporta. Like, the list goes on and on and on for him. But the negative here is there's no Ben Johnson, right? And we do see that sometimes when that creative offensive play caller leaves and they have to fill the void, it's not as good the following year.
Yeah.
So do we see Mr. Consistent stay consistent?
I think he will be. Yeah, Ben Johnson leaving sucks, but Dan Campbell, he is going to be ultra aggressive no matter who he has on his staff. That's just his mindset. I think the whole team is absolutely bought into that kind of mindset. So they all back those decisions. I don't remember the guy's name who they bring in as the new OC, but I'm willing to bet.
I will find that for you in 30 seconds.
I'm willing to bet that it was a very calculated move from Dan Campbell, knowing whoever it is, he knows that they are also bought into that ultra aggressive, play style and just
John Morton.
Yeah, just manhandling.
I want to say he
game.
was the Denver guy. I think this is the dude that came from Denver.
Okay.
So I don't know why that's coming up in my brain, but I believe he was like the tight ends coach or something like that. So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. You know what I mean?
For me, there's just too many positives that surround Jared Goff. I think they definitely outweigh any negatives you would see. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery as an RB2. We still haven't seen anything at a Jameson Williams. Let's be honest with ourselves.
No.
Like Jameson Williams, prior to his ACL tear in the college football playoffs, like he was going to be the number one receiver off the board.
He was that dude.
He was the number one receiver off the board up until that ACL injury.
Yeah.
So he's had a couple of years now. He's also dealt with some injuries throughout seasons, and they kind of lingered. And I
think he's in the last year of his contract too.
If he isn't, he's getting close.
Yeah.
But yeah, we haven't seen as much as we would like to see out of Jameson Williams. Like I said, there's way too many positives that surround Jared Goff for me to really be nervous about him. And where you can draft him, like especially in redraft, I just think like it's such a he's going to be there, and I think he's like a 7th to 9th round.
Yeah.
In a redraft league, and I'm usually at that point I'm like, all right, I should probably start thinking about a quarterback if I didn't get one of those like top 4 or 5 rushing guys.
Yep.
And I'm so okay with taking him where he goes.
Oh sure, absolutely.
Because also where you're taking his weapons, there's stack potential everywhere.
Because there's so many of them. So we'll have to see. All right, rounding out our early 2025 rankings, we have Mr. Caleb Williams.
Are we surprised? We've been harping on this guy for too long. I'm sure people are sick of hearing his name.
I don't mean to throw you under the bus, Will. I have him at 8.
Yeah, I had him outside the top
12.
I had him at 12. I had him at 12.
So explain yourself, brother.
These rankings are fluid. Yes, everybody knows. Both of us are all in on Chicago. I'm just waiting for them to crash and burn, and we just look so stupid. But you know what? You got to go down.
We're gonna be here for the ride.
Somebody has to do it. All right.
I was gonna say, clip this. When Caleb Williams is throwing for 4,500 yards and 30 touchdowns. I'm just saying because we were here first. But listen, let's talk about all of the reasons why we have Caleb here in the top 10. New offensive coordinator. We were just talking about Ben Johnson leaving the Detroit Lions. Well, hey, listen, he comes to town here in Chicago, and he brings all of that creativity with him. The first 2 picks in the draft are offense. They invest in a brand new tight end in Colson Loveland, who we both like and think is very talented. And then they turn around and they go and get Luther Burden, who is also talented. I don't know. It sounds like Ben Johnson listens to the Fourth and Fantasy podcast. I don't know.
Smart guy.
But so you have all of these. You have year 2 chemistry now with Roma Dunze. Oh wait, DJ Moore's still there. And DeAndre Swift is there. Could they have upgraded at running back? Sure, but I think there are so many pieces for Caleb Williams to utilize week in, week out, play after play that I really hope he just does well. I really do.
This is the year for him to do it. Like I don't think there's really any more excuses we can give the guy. So if he's gonna do it, it's gonna be this year. Yeah, so when I did my my projections, I had him ending up at 12. But I will say, in my defense, so sure he's my 12th quarterback.
Yep.
But my 11 and 10, they're separated by 14 points. Okay. So I wouldn't say it's that drastic. I have him just outside that top 10. But when it comes to Caleb, the passing attempts were off the charts last year. And that's due to the fact that they were just down in every single game, and they had to do something to try and stay in it.
Yep.
I do expect those so he had 566 attempts last year. I have them stat out for 560 as a team, so down a little bit, but the number's still up there. Mm-hmm. I think one thing we have to acknowledge is that the quality of those attempts has to increase, and I think they will. He only had 6 interceptions last year. Like he took care of the ball. And I think that gets overlooked. I have him for 5 interceptions this year.
Yeah.
He also only had a 62 completion percentage.
That was the stat I was just about to go into.
That number's going to go up.
It has to.
Just based off. I don't even care if Caleb Williams still stinks. It just based off of Ben Johnson's designed offense. There's no way he throws less than 65%.
I was gonna say, I'm looking at some of his game logs. Like week 1, he had a 48% completion percentage.
Yeah.
42. I see a 54. Like. These games have to change in order for him to, really take that next step.
I literally don't think it will be possible for him to have less than a 65% completion percentage, just based off that offense. Book it.
Oh, wow.
Book it. Lock me in.
Lock it in. My one question for you, Woo, with Caleb Williams is, do we finally see a Bears quarterback go over 4,000 passing yards?
Oh, I want to say yes.
Can you sit here and say yes to me right now?
Next year. No, I'm not gonna say next year.
Okay.
I'm gonna give him. I'll give him one more year to get his feet underneath him, get a year
Then
with Ben
year
Johnson.
year three's
But I
the
think
year
he'll
for you?
flirt. I think he'll flirt with it.
I think so
he'll flirt
too.
with
I mean,
it.
he was close. He was 35-41. Like he was less than 500 yards away from it. So, I mean, why not him?
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
One other thing I want to highlight on Caleb Williams before we move on. Last year he had 81 rushing attempts for 489 yards.
Huge.
Yes, half of those were probably him running for his life because he had zero time behind the offensive line. I do expect that to change, but he is an athlete. The guy can move if he wants to, or when he needs to, and that was also a big part of his college game.
Fumbles need to come down though.
Correct. Absolutely. But that was a big part of his college game. Like, he used his legs. Maybe it wasn't always to run, but it was extending plays. And, in college, it's a lot easier for receivers to get open after a play breaks down. But I think in the NFL, that can translate to picking up rushing yards. And I think his legs are slept on a little bit. I'm not saying he's anywhere near, those top 5 guys we had, but it's there.
And he had 0 rushing touchdowns. Imagine he just, let's just say he sneaks in three of them. You know what I mean? That's 18 more points right there, in fantasy football. So
correct.
We'll have to see. So those are our top 10 way too early. I'm going to say way too early rankings.
They're fluid.
So please don't judge us in, July and August and you're saying like, what's going on here? Because we're going to have brand new rankings for you.
They're so fluid.
I'm
telling you right now, I'm going to say 75% of these names are in a different spot, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah. So listen, don't judge us. Please, judge us later when our official rankings come out.
Or if we're just right on everything,
Yeah, or clip it.
You heard it here first.
But I did want to get into a couple of names that you wanted to highlight, Wu, and I wanted to highlight for honorable mentions. I'm gonna go first. I don't want to. It kind of blows my mind. I'm not even gonna. It's crazy that we just did a rankings and Patrick Mahomes was not in that list.
Fantasy and real NFL are two different
things. So who knows? I know we sat here and talked about, at the completion of the Super Bowl that, Kansas City has to, change their ways and go back to the way they were. It doesn't look like they did that in the offseason. And I think that's kind of why I have Patrick Mahomes still ranked so low. Not to say that he's a bad quarterback. He's a phenomenal quarterback. He's probably the best quarterback in the league for real life NFL. But for fantasy, it's a completely different story. But don't forget the name Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I have him as my QB 11. He's on, and Brock Purdy's my 10, but he's like right behind Purdy. But again, just
it hurts just for you to even say into a sentence that you have Brock Purdy ahead of Patrick Mahomes. It just blows my mind.
But it's like, they showed last year that they can go out and win a game without having to score. That defense is really good. And again, they're so concerned about just the number in the win column. They don't care how many points it took to get them there. But we can't sit here and pretend like we don't know what Patrick Mahomes can do with in an explosive offense like we've seen it. I just don't think that's their game anymore. I don't think that's the case. It'll be interesting with Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice. Hopefully we can get a full season out of both of them. And then we could be having a completely different discussion halfway through next year.
Very well.
But it's no Tyreek Hill, prime Travis Kelce, style of offense anymore.
Yeah. Anyone you want to highlight, Wu, honorable mention?
Yeah. So one name that I don't have inside my top 15 that I really thought I was going to. So this is my first time using, any kind of stat projection to do something like this. So that is this is also part of, why my rankings might be very different, in the coming months. But Bryce Young ended up as my quarterback 16. I was having this conversation the other night with a friend. I think we were talking. One of our friends has Bryce Young on his roster, and I think his other quarterback is McCarthy. And we were talking about how if teams have, two in a superflex league as a dynasty, if teams have 2 really good quarterbacks and the skill positions are, kind of that mid tier, maybe a couple studs, maybe not, compared to a team with 2 quarterbacks with studs up and down the lineup.
Yep.
We were talking about how, the teams with the 2 quarterbacks, the 2 really stud quarterbacks, like they can be that positional advantage to win you a week. And the reason why we're talking about it is because Bryce Young is on one of these teams with JJ McCarthy, but the rest of his lineup is loaded.
Stacked.
So we ended up talking about Bryce Young, and I think in my head I have him finishing anywhere from like 10 to 15. This was like a week before I did the rankings. So I was surprised to see him not finish there. I mean, he was right outside of it. There are some adjustments I want to make, but just to see that initial, like I talked about, that initial reaction or initial thought process that I had doing this, to see him outside of my top 15 was surprising. But I still think I have him somewhere between 10 to 15 when it's all said and done.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of Bryce Young's, from the off season until now. I also have him at 15, and I think as the year or the summer starts to kind of progress and things like that, I think I can totally see him moving up my list just because, he finally has like an alpha receiver in Ted McMillan, and I think it's just going to pay dividends, for him. Is Chuba still enough for them in the running game? He kind of really proved it. I know you really like Chuba, but if Chuba can still be that kind of constant, force that gets them 4 to 5 yards per carry, and then Bryce can start to work in a little play action to McMillan or to Leggett, I think he's going to have a phenomenal year.
Yeah. No, listen, I'm buying the Bryce Young hype. I don't know how high I can put him. Like, I loved what I saw at the back half of last year. I need to see that for an extended period of time.
Right, in order for him to move up. Last name that I'll give you is Jordan Love, quarterback out of Green Bay. It's again he has so many toys to play with. On top of Reed, Dobbs, Watson tore his ACL, so he's probably not going to be there. But Wicks, they also got Matthew Golden. They have 2 reliable tight ends in Musgrave and Kraft, and Josh Jacobs, is catching balls out of the backfield and scoring touchdowns. Like, Love is somebody where I could see where some of these elite names, like I'm not wishing it upon these guys, but let's say Burrow gets hurt, or Bo Nix doesn't impress us, and then next thing you know that Jordan Love is moving himself into the top 12 category for it. So he's a name that I'm definitely keeping my eye on as the season goes on.
I do really, really like Jordan Love, the player. I haven't had the pleasure of having him on a fantasy team, but the guy's surrounded by potential weapons. But I think potential is the big word there.
Correct.
We don't know. Like, it's kind of like it's a weekly, kind of different story. You don't know who's going to be that guy. For a while, I was convinced it was going to be Jaden Reed. It just looked so set in stone. He was having some big weeks, but for whatever reason, it just never stuck. And then it was Dontavian Wicks, and Christian Watson has his weeks. And now they bring in Matthew Golden, first round draft capital behind him. But then I see a report from Schefter today that the Packers told Jaden Reed that even though they went and got Golden in the first round, that's not going to necessarily affect his spot on the depth chart. I think that's BS. But
I think the only reason why I think they would say that to him is that Jaden Reed is their Swiss Army knife, and they use him in so many different scenarios that I could see.
Golden could be that.
He could be, but I think they rely on Jaden Reed to be that dynamic piece in the offense where it's like, we're going to run the ball. Oh, here he comes in a reverse, or, something crazy like that. So I think I believe that report from Schefter, but who knows? Maybe Golden impresses and starts to really chew away at Reed's playtime.
Yeah, we've talked about this in the past. There's certain coaches in the NFL, specifically offensive-minded ones, that you just want any piece you can get. There's the Ben Johnsons, there's the Sean McVays, and then there's Matt LaFleur. So that it's just another green flag for Jordan Love.
Absolutely. Do you have one last honorable mention for us?
I do, and I want you to just think about it for a second.
All right, I'm here.
Trevor Lawrence.
Okay, sell me on it.
I have him statted out as my QB 15, which just sits outside the QB 1 range. Looking back at it, so he was one of the highest or most talked about quarterback prospects since the Peyton Manning.
I believe the word was generational.
Yeah, generational. That's a better word. He was the next Peyton Manning. The Jets were one stupid win away from drafting him. We don't have to talk about how the rest of that ended up. But after all this hype, it hasn't been there. He was the QB 6 in 2022. But last year, he only plays 10 games. He deals with the injury. The things that I really like going into this year, you have a year 2 of Brian Thomas Jr., the Jaguars intentionally go up and draft Travis Hunter, and we are both anticipating him being on the offensive side of the ball more. They bring in Liam Cohen, who just had a sick offense with Tampa Bay.
Yep.
I do expect the running game to improve. Travis Etienne just had a brutal year. Tank Bigsby's there as well, and I think they drafted Tootin as well, right? The Virginia Tech kid.
By Shell Tootin.
Yep. Yeah. So I just think if there's the appropriate weapons around him, I really like Liam Cohen as a play caller. I'm not sure if they've come out and said who's going to be the play caller on offense, but if it's Liam Cohen, it's got to
be him.
I would think so. So I'm all in on that. And he has the arm. Like, he's got a couple 4,000 passing yard seasons. It's just nothing has, it hasn't all been put together in one season. There's been bits of this here. There's been bits of this here, across different seasons. And we're all waiting for it all to just come together for one full season.
You got to think, though, that if he doesn't do it this year, they're out on him.
And I think his biggest Achilles heel is the turnovers.
Yeah.
In 2021, he had 17 interceptions. 2023, he had 14 interceptions. Last year, he played 10 games. He had 7 interceptions. In terms of fumbles, from 2021 to 2024, he went 9, 12, 12, and last year he only had 3. And of those fumbles, he lost 5, 9, and 7. Like, that's a problem.
Yeah.
So this is something that he needs to clean up the turnovers. But he has all the weapons. He's got the offensive mind behind him. I think this could be a year where people are kind of forgetting about him. He's coming off, a terrible year and dealing with injury. He only plays half the season. If there's ever a season where there's going to be, people sleeping on Trevor Lawrence and you might be able to find some value there, I think it could be this year.
Yeah, he might be an interesting second quarterback stash in redraft leagues where you just take him with your last round pick and you just kind of see what happens.
I'm all in on that.
Or if you go super late and you were someone who got Brian Thomas Jr. and you're able to stack him at the very end.
Because at the end of the day, if he ends up stinking, you can just cut him and you'll be fine.
Exactly. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. That is episode 19 of the fantasy or Fourth and Fantasy podcast. Wow, I just drew a blank. Sorry. It
is our show, right?
It's late. It's late.
It is late. It is a weekday.
It is. But we appreciate you listening in with us. Please make sure you're following us on all of our socials. Twitter at Fourth and Fantasy Pod, Instagram and TikTok at Fourth and Fantasy. YouTube, make sure you're checking out a video format like you are viewing today. And make sure you send us some questions and things like that. Make sure if you ever want us to check your team out, we've done that before with some people in the past to kind of give you some advice here on the show on what direction you want to move with your team. Send it our way and maybe you might see yourself on the show.
Hell yeah.
So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you on the other side.
See ya.